Today, we're honored to welcome Darren Clair to the show today. I'm very excited about this. He talks about very important health topics that, when we understand this, it can really transform our health. It's really about vibrant health, like creating a vibrant life. And there's so many different topics within that, but essentially not looking for the quick fix, right? It's really more about longevity in terms of our habits. Because what we do on a repeated basis, who we become. So it's about getting to what is real. And he's written an excellent book, also all about vibrant health. And we're very honored to have him on the show today. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, Anthony. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. So I'm very curious to hear your story and how you got into wellness, everything you're doing to help people today.
Okay, well, uh, because the show is only an hour or so, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. But, but basically, I formerly was an anesthesiologist, board certified anesthesiologist. Uh, but it occurred to me as I was doing, sometimes doing emergency surgery in the middle of the night on people who are, that's a high risk situation. It occurred to me that not everybody, but a number of these people could have avoided putting themselves in this life-threatening position if they had just made some better decisions in terms of how they lead their life. Furthermore, I realized that the medical system that we currently have is not going to bring that up to people because our system is based on treating sick people. So the last thing our system wants is a lot of healthy people, right? Because it's bad for business. And it's a very successful business, probably the most successful business in the history of mankind, in this country alone, approaching $5 trillion a year. So anyway, it occurred to me that, okay, this is not happening. And I guess this is my job is to start, helping people appreciate that good health is available. We are endowed with it through our DNA, through God, through the universe, however you want to think of your higher power, with all the tools that we need for good health, at least 80% of the time, if not more. But again, when was the last time anybody went to a doctor and they spent time talking to people about in depth about, you know, what their lifestyle looks like, how much sleep they're getting, what's their evening looking like, what are they eating, how are they exercising? Not just, are you exercising? Yes, check. Are you eating, staying away? Typically, it's staying away from fat, which fortunately, that whole thing has been set on its head, which is good. But so just checking things off rather than exploring these topics with people to help them make better choices. So anyway, that was kind of my evolution. As a result of that, opened what was initially called Vibrance Medical Group back in 2002, and has since evolved into Vibrance Health. And what we have is a number of programs that are designed to help people optimize their health rather than just not be sick.
I love it, man. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so it sounds like, as you mentioned, the medical system, like they're not really invested in your wellness in a sense. And I don't feel like it's the doctors necessarily. It's more like the system. Like, I mean, of course, it has its place, but even though if they're well-meaning, they don't necessarily have the tools to bring about wellness. Do I have that right?
Well, they don't have the tools if they haven't sought them because you don't get any of that in medical school. The biggest courses in medical school are number one, pathology, which is a major course all year long, hours and hours of time spent on it. And the other one is pharmacology. Those are the two biggest courses in medical school. So you learn about what's wrong and you learn with what drug to take or to give a person for that. There's no courses on health. There's, if anything, a very, short, shallow course on nutrition, if at all. But there's no courses on exercise. There's no courses on sleep. There's no courses on helping people manage stress, which is, it's an epidemic these days, right? So again, it's just designed to focus on what's wrong and what can we do about it. that's the way insurance pays doctors, is to find something wrong and treat it, not to help people improve their health, right? So doctors, even if they go into medicine wanting to make a difference and wanting to help people, be healthy, they're kind of forced, if they use insurance, if they accept insurance, they're kind of forced to always look for what's wrong. And the truth of the matter, Anthony, is we are always, until we die, we are always healthier than we are sick. Our body is always trying to heal. And what really brought that home for me was reading about a study coming out of the University of San Diego, whereby they were looking at people in hospice, okay, people who are about to die. And what they found was, even at that very last moment, those people's brains were still making new brain cells. And the brain cells were still making new connections between brain cells. So that told me your body is always trying to heal. And if we work with it and support it in what it knows how to do much better than me, or quite frankly, any doctor I've ever met, we can have some pretty darn good results.
Yeah, very interesting perspective, right? Because the body is designed to be healthy, as you mentioned. It's designed to heal itself. Oftentimes, we just have to get out of the way, I find.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my point, Anthony. As a better way to say what I was trying to say. We just need, as doctors, often we need to just get out of the way and let the body do what it knows how to do better.
And it can come in different forms, right? Like, it may be different for the individual. Like, maybe we need to get out of the way in terms of ultra processed food. Maybe it's heavy metals. Maybe we're just not, like whatever
No,
inputs that are causing it, it's going to be dependent on individual. So it's interesting to be aware of these things.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's human nature to look for an easy way out. I mean, face it,
Yeah.
we are an energy system, and so we're always going to try and conserve energy. So if we can have our Starbucks delivered to our door and we don't have to get off our butt and go there, yeah, you mean people are going to do it. I get it. But a different way to think about it, Anthony, which I think is useful, is there's nothing wrong with medications and procedures. Definitely we are very fortunate to have them. However, the analogy I like to use is it's kind of like having a Formula One race car, and you become convinced that, oh, I've got this new additive and it's going to make all the difference. We're going to win the Grand Prix, but not checking the tires. If the tires are flat, I don't care what you put in the gas tank, you're not going to win the Grand Prix, right? So we got to cover the basics, check the tires, check the gas tank, the oil, do all those usual things. And then if there's still a problem, okay, that's when I think it's very appropriate to consider medications, surgery, whatever else is available.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because some of these things, like, they don't have any value. Just want to be mindful of how we use them, right? Like, in no way should be a drug first culture. Like, we have an issue, well, that
Right.
must mean I need to take this, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely. It's so
yeah,
true. And, for instance, with antidepressants, I have so many patients, especially women who are, perimenopausal, 40s, 50s, and they're on an antidepressant from their GP. Why? Well, because they're feeling a little anxious, or maybe they actually are a little depressed. And so they just put them on a medication, write a script, in and out of the office in 10 minutes, on to the next patient. But the truth of the matter, Anthony, is there are many studies showing that regular physical exercise, 15, 20 minutes of cardio a day, is as effective as any medication for depression. But do doctors talk about that? No, they don't. And, if somebody's really depressed, well, sometimes they need medication to get them off the couch, to get them out of the house, to get them moving again. But so many times people get put on something and they're on it for years. I mean, years. Same thing with, medications for upset heartburn. Doctors rarely look into the cause of it. They don't look into the stress. They don't look into whether or not the person maybe has sleep apnea. Snoring is a big reason for heartburn. Do doctors ever check on that? They ever recommend somebody has a home sleep study? I have to tell you, I have rarely in my 40 years of practice been told by a patient that, oh yeah, my doctor was concerned about my heartburn, so he ordered a home sleep study. It just doesn't happen, right? So, I mean, it's all kind of the same thing. It's what works, what gets, because if you're insurance based and insurance these days pays very little for a doctor visit, so the doctor is forced to see a lot of patients in order to not only pay his salary, but also his staff to pay for his rent. So you're kind of forced into this unfortunate situation where even if you want to, you can't spend a lot of time with people, and so it becomes you just write a prescription which works for the patient because, again, due to the fact that we're all, it's human nature, looking for an easy way out, we go along with it. And, it's the doctor prescribing it, right? So the doctor knows, right? It must be the best thing for me. So anyway, I'm on a bit of a rant, but I apologize.
I like it, man. I mean, you mentioned that thing with exercise. It's just such an important thing, like because it's what our biology requires. But if you don't know, you don't know. Essentially, it's like, man, it goes back to how we're designed to be healthy. Like when we put the correct inputs, we just happen to be vibrant in our life.
Yeah, yeah, truly. I mean, absolutely. Along those lines, Anthony, I had an occasion to pause at Thanksgiving. I was actually in Colorado visiting my daughters and grandchildren that live there. And Thanksgiving dinner, there was my family, but also some other, friends and whatnot. And I was chatting with this very lovely couple, uh, Brandon and Sarah, and he's early 40s. They're both in good shape, good health. Um, but he was talking about what I do and my current state of health. And he actually said to me, "You mean when you wake up in the morning, you don't have aches and pains?" Because I'm 72, he assumed that yes, I would wake up with aches and pains. And I think a lot of people think the same way. But it's fun. The funny thing is, it didn't actually even occur to me that that was unusual or out of the norm that I didn't have aches and pains until he brought it up. I go, no, I don't. And I actually never thought about that. But yes, I am very grateful that I don't wake up with aches and pains every day. Because, I'm not perfect, Anthony, but, I try and be consistent. And you brought that up at the very beginning. Being consistent is so important with the basics, generally getting enough quality sleep, generally eating very cleanly, staying away from processed foods being the most important thing, getting regular physical exercise, managing my stress. And the other thing that's also important, Anthony, which I think gets people off track a lot, is how they start their day, right? It's very easy these days to, you wake up and you immediately go to your phone and start scrolling. And I think that's the worst thing to do because you're already, in somebody else's head or they're in your head. And I really think it's very important. And I make a conscious effort every morning to spend a couple of minutes just being grateful for a few things, doing just 5 minutes of meditation, and then listening to something that's going to help me tune into me and what's my plan? What's my goal for today? Before I go to my emails and that sort of thing. I think it's just a much better way to start the day in a positive, constructive manner. Because if you don't start that way, if you're, then otherwise, before you know it, you're late. You got to get to the office. You're grabbing a cup of coffee on the way out the door, and you're just rush, 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 and forget it. The rest, it's hard to get it back once you've lost it, right, Anthony? So, um, anyway, I
Absolutely.
think that's something that people should think about. Not just their evening, which is very important, but also how they start the day is what sets the tone for the day.
100%. Yeah. It's taking agency over your mind, body, and spirit, right? Like owning your mind so you can kind of live on
Yep,
purpose and actually reach your goals, right? That's what it's all about. It's not
absolutely.
like immersing yourself in negativity. How about you actually kind of like focus in on what matters to you?
Exactly. And I love the way you phrase that, owning your mind, because so many times people have just accepted that the mind runs the show. Like you're suggesting, no, the mind is a tool of ours, but it's not the boss. Unless if we allow it to be, sure, it will be. But again, it's really just a very effective tool if used properly.
That's right. And something came out for me when you were talking about like the aches and pains is like we just operate out of this paradigm of how we think things are supposed to be. It's how it's always been. But again, we don't realize how healthy we can be because we're just kind of used to this. Even if you don't have a chronic disease, you may just have this low level like fatigue or whatever it is. But man, like vibrant health is a thing for real.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Anthony, and that's a very good point. I'm glad you brought it up. So many people, come to me and they're taking medicine for their blood pressure, of course, something for their heartburn, and they just, well, I, I, I am. My doctor said it's because I'm getting old. It's just like that is so unfortunate that people have bought into that concept because you're absolutely right. It's just we buy into it. I noticed the other day that there was a 80-year-old woman who climbed Mount Everest. There's been
Wow.
people in their 80s who have completed the triathlon in Hawaii. So we just accept that as normal, and it's not. Well, it is. It's common, but it's not normal. And I always say age is AGE, another good excuse, right?
Mm.
Because that's all it is. And if you are consistent, if you get exercise on a regular basis, and do all the right things, you can have good health and vibrant health well into your 80s. And really, not just be alive, because who wants to be alive if you can't enjoy it, if you're in a wheelchair or, God bless those people who are in a wheelchair, but, it's not about longevity as much as it is about, extending the number of quality years. Uh, and that is possible as long as you start with the basics.
100%. Yeah, it's common, but it's not normal. I like that. Uh, Something you had mentioned a few times is like taking the easy way out, right? Like, why is it that people look for quick fixes instead of a long term solution?
Well, like I say, Anthony, I think part of it is just human nature. I mean, we we evolved when we didn't have all these, things that are time savers and energy savers. So we couldn't call up, we couldn't, on our phone have Starbucks deliver coffee. If we wanted something to drink, we had to walk down to the well or walk down to the river. If we wanted some food, we had to go find it and catch it and bring it back. So as a result of evolving in that space, and because calories have always been, until very recently in our evolutionary history, an issue, famine was a real thing. So we have in our DNA, you know, evolved to the point where we look to conserve energy because, if we only have a certain number of calories and tomorrow there's no food, we don't we want to be able to get through tomorrow, right? So we're always looking to conserve energy. It's human nature, but that doesn't mean we have to be have human nature dictate how we lead our lives, right? Now we have these conveniences. We still need to do the things that have gotten us healthy, eating cleanly, because there was no fast food, a million years ago. Getting exercise. People didn't have cars. They had to walk, run, do whatever it was to get where they needed to be. Getting sleep. That's something people don't appreciate. People these days often, they'll come in and they'll tell me, well, I'm getting 6 hours of sleep. And what I point out to them is, okay, so you're getting 6 hours of sleep. We don't know yet if it's quality sleep, but consider this. You're comparing yourself to your colleagues who are also trying to make ends meet, trying to get ahead. But I think a better comparison is to your ancestors, because your ancestors were around when we were evolving. We're still evolving, but it's such a slow process that we don't really see it in many lifetimes. But anyway, 100,000 years ago, people were hunter gatherers, right? Hunter gatherers work, if you will, 4 hours a day, at least by moderns, but looking at modern hunter gatherer societies, 4 hours a day. And what's that work? That's walking through the forest looking for berries, right? I mean, that's what we consider a vacation, right? So that's what they were doing for 4 hours a day. But the flip side of that is that means they had 20 hours a day where they were either sleeping or relaxing, right? So if you're in the present world where you're only getting 6 hours of sleep, and by the way, your days are much busier and much more stressful than our ancestors, you can't possibly be getting enough recovery time, right? You need to be getting close to 8 hours of quality sleep. And many people, self-medicate, or their doctor gives them a sleeping pill, or women have hormonal issues, so they're waking up frequently, or men have, and women have snore too, actually, but men are snoring, so they're not getting deep sleep. So all those things are impacting the number of hours of quality sleep you're getting. So you're getting much less quality sleep than our ancestors, and your stress levels are off the charts compared to our ancestors. I mean, yes, they had some very acute, intense stress, but it wasn't day after day after day, like ours is now. The analogy I think helps people understand it or get a handle on it is, again, due to evolution, our stress system, the adrenals and cortisol and whatnot, was designed to work as if you're a sprinter. So once in a while, you had to go from zero, to 60 in a few seconds. And that's what our stress system is designed for. The tiger, things like that. But these days, it's as if we're telling that sprinter who's not, today you're not going to run 100 yards. Today, you're going to run a marathon. But of course, you're going to run it at the sprinter's pace because that's the only pace you know. So you're going to run a marathon. You're going to sprint a marathon, okay? And tomorrow, we're going to do the same thing. You're going to run another marathon. And the day after that, you're going to run another marathon. And again, it's not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just not the system we were designed for. So we need to really focus on quality downtime. And sleep is the major downtime that we have these days. So it's got to be good. Anyway, I kind of got off topic of what your initial question was, but I think it all comes back to, as a result of all those things, we look for the least energy expensive solution. And for a lot of people, it's a pill.
Yeah. 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 We're in this chronic state of stress, as you mentioned. It's like, yeah, we need stress is good sometimes. Like we can, like for exercise and, everything that kind of like builds up our system. But we need rest, as you mentioned, like downtime, mindfulness. And it's really a cause of chronic disease if we're not able to get in a parasympathetic state.
Exactly. We got to get that balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic. You're absolutely right, Anthony.
Yeah. Something I also think is like why we go for the quick fix. Perhaps we don't have like understanding of what we're doing in terms of results, right? Because we go for the quick thing, but we don't understand that it's not going to actually lead to long term results in a sense. And if we want real results, we want real vibrancy in a sense. Like we actually have to do the real thing. And I think it's almost operating at a level of intelligence in a way as well.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, Anthony. The nice thing about the pill is it deals with a particular symptom. So basically, it's just a band-aid because it's not fixing the underlying problem. Uh, but the other part of that is For instance, with the idea of depression and taking a pill versus exercise. Well, if you take the pill, maybe it'll help with the depression, maybe and maybe not. If you exercise, you not only can cure the depression as opposed to just hide it, you also, strengthen your skeletal system. You lose body weight. You improve your immune system. You improve cognitive function. You get multiple benefits by doing something that Mother Nature wants you to do rather than just taking a pill and maybe getting relief of your depression, right? So that's always the thing that amazes me is like you're looking for the short answer, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's so many other positives that even if they were equal in terms of effectiveness, all the positives you get from living a healthy lifestyle way outweigh the convenience factor because again, okay, it's convenient. You take the pill, you're not depressed. But now you're overweight because you're not getting exercise. So you can take another pill for that, right? We know about those pills. You can take another pill for your high blood pressure. You can take another pill. It's just like, so now you're taking half a dozen pills and you don't really feel great, but, but your numbers look good when you see the doctor. And so he's happy. So you think, okay, I guess this is the best I can do. And it's so unfortunate because you can do so much better.
Yeah, 100%. Like you mentioned hunter-gatherer genes too. Like we really have the same genes and we require certain inputs. And something I like to think about is like getting connected to what is real, right? And it's not just about health. It helps you kind of connect with your purpose in a sense, right? Because it's all interconnected, right? And if we start to connect to what is real and we start to live like in alignment. That's something I've been thinking about in my own life.
Wonderful. Yeah, it is, when you have a healthy lifestyle, you are in alignment with who you are as a being, as you a member of society, as better in alignment with your purpose, because you're going to have a clear head. Um, yeah, I mean, it is all about alignment, both within yourself, but also within the greater scheme of things, within the society.
100%. Something that you talk about also is why prevention fails, right? Can you explain what that means and like what is a better path to living a vibrant, healthy life?
Well, it gets back to what I was saying a little earlier, Anthony. The prevention isn't bad, but the problem is you're still focusing on what's wrong, right? And I just think it's the wrong outlook to have on life. Is looking for, and again, I think it's part of our human nature. Our brain is designed to, recognize danger, right? Because part of our brain is really about, survival, not so much vibrance, but survival. Because again, for our ancestors, survival was a much, riskier undertaking, right? Because of predators, because of enemies, the environment. So just surviving was more of a challenge than it is today. So so nonetheless, prevention is built into our brain as well. But again, you're focusing on what's wrong as opposed to, okay, I've got that issue, but what's working well and how can I optimize what I'm doing so that that thing that's not perfect, not optimum, is not going to degrade my health, right? And that's why I think you need to be proactive. It's, again, it's checking the tires before you have a blowout at midnight on a lonely stretch of highway, right? You get the tires changed when there's still some tread on them because you don't want to be in that situation. We do that for our cars. We should also do it for ourselves.
Yeah. So it sounds like almost mastering the basics in a sense, right? Getting the foundational things down for health and wellness to create a foundation that we can build upon and just kind of go from there and get to another level in terms of vibrancy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If we just start with the basics, the fundamentals, like you're saying, in general can have great health. Yes, for certain people they need to do extra in one regard or another, and some certain people will need to take a medication or have surgery without a doubt. But again, at least 80% of why people visit doctors, and this is scientifically shown in studies, 80% is due to issues of lifestyle. 80%. $5
Yeah.
trillion. 80% of that is $4 trillion. That would go a long way in terms of solving a lot of problems in our country if we had an extra $4 trillion to play with.
Yeah, it's more efficient for sure. So we talked about the fundamentals a few times. What are some fundamentals that we should be working on? Like, is there anything that comes in your mind when it comes to most people?
Yeah, for sure. So, starting with diet, um, I'm glad to see that the guidelines have changed. The main thing with diet is you want to stay away from processed foods as much as possible. You basically, the simple way to think about this is if whatever you're buying or eating has more than one ingredient, you should think twice about whether or not you should eat it. It should be lettuce or steak or chicken or cauliflower or an orange. But when there's, 20 things on the label, even if they're quote natural, um, you should think twice, right? We're designed to eat whole foods. Personally, I don't have a problem with eating quality meat and some eggs and some fish. I don't think it should be. I'm not a big believer in the carnivore diet, but I do think that meat can be very health promoting. Um, in terms of uh, when we eat, we should eat when we're hungry. This idea that I got to get 3 square meals in, uh, that's that's an invention, right? That's an invention of the industrial complex, I believe, because I mean, typically I'm not hungry when I first wake up. I know most people I talk to, yeah, I'm not really hungry in the morning. Well, then why'd you have breakfast? Well, because I got to have 3 square meals. It's like, no, you don't. It's convenient if you're working, but it's really not the best thing for your health. And I do think that, fasting, especially intermittent fasting, can be very health promoting. And I do it on a regular basis. Um, in terms of when we eat, you don't want to eat and go right to bed. You want to have a couple of hours between your last food intake and bed. That's going to help promote a good night's sleep. You want to keep alcohol down. Alcohol, a little bit is fine, but the problem with alcohol, especially if you have it in the evening, is it actually, and this goes for wine, but also for hard liquor, it actually decreases your serotonin and melatonin levels. Serotonin is not only important for mood, but also for sleep. And melatonin, of course, plays a big role in sleep. So alcohol in the evening is definitely going to impact the quality of your sleep. Just try not having, comparing a night where you don't have anything, how you feel in the morning versus a night where go out with friends and have, a couple of glasses of wine or something. Just notice the difference in terms of how you feel in the morning. So that's important. Getting enough quality sleep. Like I say, I really think people in general need close to 8 hours of sleep. Again, due to the stress level we are all under these days. Um, when you're going to bed, I really think it's a bad idea to scroll before you go to bed. Again, it's just going to fill your mind with things that are, destructive or not positive. So reading a book, something light, if you need that before you drift off to sleep, I think is a much healthier way to go. In terms of exercise, we need both cardio and strength training. Both are very important. Both need to be done on a regular basis. What I say to people is, look, no matter where you are, start today. If you're not exercising, start with just putting on your tennis shoes if that's a good first step for you. If you're a little further along, then okay, get out and walk a bit. If you're doing that, okay, maybe add in a few little sprints. Slowly work up in terms of your endurance and whatnot. But also find things that you enjoy doing. It's going to be hard to stick to your New Year's resolution if your New Year's resolution is to get in shape by doing something that you hate doing, right? Come February 1st, probably you've forgotten about it, right? But there's so many ways to get exercise that are fun, and so I'm sure if you look, you can find things that you enjoy doing. And again, being consistent is doing something on a regular basis is so important. Um, um, Managing stress. Exercise, of course, is a great way to manage stress, but often just spending some alone time, um, being with loved ones, dear friends, are ways to help manage stress. Um, those are kind of the keys, for sure. I also am a big believer in the importance of maintaining healthy hormone levels, not abusing hormones like some athletes and whatnot do. But the fact is our hormone levels decline as we age in everybody. We were not designed to live forever, and one simple way Mother Nature designed to make sure that we leave the stage is by reducing our hormones as your hormones decline. So does your vibrance, so does your energy, so does your strength. And with that, if the whole tribe is being chased by a tiger, you're if you're the older one, the tiger will probably catch you and not the young people, so they can go on to have more children, right? Which is, again, the species is always trying to increase propagation, right? So it's a way to cull the herd, if you will, right? Um,
Yeah.
but exercise is so important for, like I said, your heart health, your brain health, your immune system, keeping your skeletal system strong and resilient so that you don't break a bone if you fall down. All those things are super important. Um, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I don't know if that really was much of a nutshell, but
And man, I love it. It's like it comes down to a lot of these small habits, right? And I think it's about progress, not perfection, because you kind of mentioned it's like we
yes,
go for these big things in a sense, and we try to take everything on all at once, but that's how we fail, right? It's like you just gotta do what you can, and also kind of understand that it's a process, and just kind of trust, and
yes,
just keep moving forward.
absolutely. That's a very good point, Anthony. Another thing I think is helpful too. And I think I remember reading this in an excellent book called Atomic Habits. And I forget the author's name, but it's a really good book.
James Clear.
And he talks about, okay, thank you. So, one of the things I loved what he says is you have to change your mindset from I'm going to run a 10K to I am an athlete. No matter what your state of health is, even if you never were an athlete, if you used to be an athlete, you see yourself as an athlete. And what do athletes do? Athletes train. They may not, they don't worry so much about completing the 10K or whatever it is. They just know that this is part of my life. This is what I do. Even if it's just putting on the shoes and walking, 100 yards. That's what athletes do. They stay active. And I think that change in mindset can help people overcome some of the frustration when they don't meet their goals as fast as they wanted to, right? Athletes, when they have an injury, yeah, they want to get back out on the field as fast as possible, but they trust the process. They do what they need to do. If they have to go slow, they go slow until they are able to compete at the level they want.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. It's like that progressive overload principle, right? And it's kind of building upon these. It's like habit stacking, doing what you can, and then seeing how you can add to it, right? And that's how
Yep.
you
Yep.
kind of build and make progress.
Yep, yep. I remember he brought that up in the book too, so I can see you read the book. It's a great book. I don't know if you've had
Yeah,
him on your show, but you should.
yeah. It's a habit. It's like such a you know first we make our habits, and our habits make us. Like, right, the power of
Yep.
routine is really going to
Yep.
change the trajectory of our life, what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Yep. That's how you get to a state of vibrant health. It's just perfect your habits. And again, they don't have to be perfect, but work on improving them on a regular basis, like you're suggesting, uh, and then stacking them together, and that's how you get to a state of vibrant health.
Yeah. So you've been practicing medicine for 40 years. That's a long time, right? So when you work with people, what are some like keystone principles? Like, is it maybe we can go outside of health? Maybe it's like a mindset piece. Like, are there any barriers that you see that are keeping people from making progress? Is it, maybe some challenging situations in their life? Like, what do you see when it comes to that?
Well, I mean, certainly one of the biggest barriers is people's own minds. As kind of like we were talking about before, just they kind of expect that, because they're a certain age, they won't do certain things or they will have certain problems. And that's often reinforced by their doctor, who, for whatever reason, and I don't think they're all evil, but, it's not always constructive, will just tell people, well, you're getting old. That's that's it. It's like, well, that's actually not an explanation at all. Um, and it's unfortunate that that is offered as an explanation. But I think that honestly, I got off the track of where you were going with the question. So could you reframe that so I could get back on track?
Yeah, 100%. It's like you've practicing medicine for a while. Like, is there any like type of barriers that you see people come across like on a
Yeah.
continual
Okay.
basis that you see?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Anthony. So yeah, another barrier is, um, well, again, the system's not set up to help people. Our lifestyles have gotten so jam-packed with things that, like I say, it's one of the reasons why I like to start the day with a couple of minutes of focusing on what I want to happen in the day, what I want to get out of that day, because it's so easy to get with our busy lifestyle to get distracted. We all have so many things. Women who not only work, but they're also, the major home housekeeper. So they're cooking the meals. They're often picking the kids up, not for just taking them to school and picking them up, but taking them to their after school activity and, checking to make sure they got their homework done. Not just, there are a lot of great husbands out, but it often falls upon the women. And and then there's just so many things that we're supposed to do that it's very hard to stay on track. It's one of the reasons why I went to a membership model in my practice, because I don't want to just see people every 6 months to renew their prescriptions, or to even to renew my suggestions in terms of how they should be modifying their lifestyle or whatever. I realize that it's hard to stay on track these days. And so I want to have constant communication with, I call them members. I don't call them patients, because again, I don't want to treat them as if they're sick. I want to treat them as people who are interested in optimizing their health, right? But anyway, I realize the need to act like a coach and help people stay on track. Uh, and, just re refocus every once in a while, not just January 1st, but January 1st, January 2nd, January 3rd, every day focusing. Okay, what's my plan today? Um, because again, it's we have been trained to believe that all these things are important, you know, and I find myself falling into the trap too, and I have to pull myself back. Once you go online, I'll go online for, something I want to listen to a podcast on some health issue. And before you know it, what am I seeing? I'm seeing a dozen things about Trump, or about, a sports thing, or about, it's just like, I didn't ask for any of that, but but when it gets put in front of your face, it's so easy to go, oh, that's kind of interesting. What's he doing now? And before you know it, that I don't no longer have time to listen to that podcast that I was really my intention to do, right? So
Right.
anyway, so I think that answers your question in terms of lifestyle, our busy lifestyles, all the distractions we have, and um, just staying on point with what your goals are is, I think, the hardest thing these days.
Yeah, power of accountability is so key. Like information overload, we can just kind of get distracted by these things, and that's why it's like important to like filter things to our values, right? So we kind of stay focused, and that in itself can be a practice.
Absolutely, absolutely. Definitely, it is a practice, which, like you say, practice will become a habit. Habit will become who you are. So, mhm.
Yeah, it's I see like people we tend to kind of like outsource our power a lot. Like external circumstances, like I don't feel like they have control over us, but they do have influence, right? But it's more so about going back to having like agency over mind, body, and spirit. Like how are we going to respond in a sense? Like because life is going to happen. Like you think you're going to live this like great life of vibrancy, right? But the reality is you're going to come up against resistance and challenges in the pursuit of that, and you just have to like stay the course. And it's a continual thing. It's always a decision that we have to make within ourselves. I find.
Yeah, yeah, very valid point, Anthony. Um, and again, it kind of comes back to what we've been saying all along, which is, you know, we need to think about the decisions we make. Is it really in our best interest? For instance, going back to the whole, you can order, Starbucks on your phone and have it delivered to your house. That's easy. So you are, kind of giving up some of your power by doing it. But the fact of the matter is if you, I don't know if you could, because there's so many Starbucks, so many places it might be even possible. Uh, if you were to actually get out of the house and walk down to the Starbucks, the act of walking to the Starbucks is actually probably going to help your energy level more than the caffeine in the Starbucks. But nonetheless, you also get the benefit of the fresh air, you get a little exercise, you're getting some stress management, uh, all by just taking things into your own hands, and you know becoming the agent in charge, so to speak, like you're suggesting. So again, it's all about like you're saying, becoming aware, thinking about, is this in my best interest, whatever it is.
Yeah, just become more aware of these things. Like taking the power back in your hands, and like having awareness. Like where are we? Like outsourcing our power, just wherever it is. Like because the power of awareness is so key, and I feel like awareness is in many instances is the first step to change as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And again, I think that comes back to what we were saying earlier, that, we have this tool called our brain, our mind, that is so amazing, so powerful, that we've just given up our control to it. So it runs the show, as opposed to us running our computer, our brain, and making decisions based on what our heart tells us is the best course of action, as opposed to what our brain tells us is the best step.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because you talk about resilience as well, right? Like building habits of resilience, and energy, and vitality. And of course, we've talked about that a lot. But is there anything that it comes to resilience and just kind of being more vibrant in the world that comes to you that would benefit a lot of people?
Well, again, kind of along the same lines we've been talking about, resilience comes from repetition, from experiencing things on a regular basis, dealing with problems as they arise, overcoming problems. That's really what gives you resilience, in my opinion. Not just taking a pill. That doesn't give you any resilience. If anything, it detracts from your resilience. Resilience to a cold. Well, how do you get resilience to a cold? Well, you keep your immune system strong. How do you do that? Well, you eat properly, you get enough sleep, you get regular exercise, you manage your stress, and that is going to give you a strong immune system. That will give you resilience in terms of, a cold. How do you have resilience in terms of not breaking your leg as a elderly person, woman? Well, you've got to eat properly, stay away from sugar. You've got to, get enough protein. You've got to get regular exercise, not just walking, which a lot of them do, but also you need to do strength training. You know, to that, I would add you also need estrogen. Estrogen is the best thing for osteoporosis ever invented. Um, so I do think that there's certainly a place there for natural hormones. But aside from that, resilience, uh, you know, in my opinion, comes from regular attention to what's important and overcoming uh, issues.
Awesome. Yeah, focusing on what matters for sure. All right, Darren, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing all your insights, your story, your message. Really, big theme was kind of taking back your power in a sense, like doing what is real to get real results and doing the long term thing because once we build a life on what is real and mastering the fundamentals and the foundation, that's when we can actually withstand the difficulties as well, right? Just being able to traverse these things in an intelligent manner. And again, like living a vibrant health is really kind of becoming the greatest version of you, right? Creating that vibrant energy so we can use it however we see fit in our own lives. So again, I really appreciate your message, appreciate you, and it's been really fun.
Thank you for having me, Anthony. I really appreciate it. And I love your little synopsis there. I do really believe that the best way to predict the future is to create it. So thank you very much for what you're doing, for your podcast, and for offering me to be on the show.
100%. So if people want to find you and all your work, where can we go?
Well, my website is www.vibrancehealth.com. And that's a good way to find me. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram as well, LinkedIn. And my book is, Creating a Life of Vibrance. Uh, and I would hope that people would have a look. I think it's a very useful introductory guide in terms of how to maximize your health and have a vibrant life.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thank you.